Handholds can be made out of lots of things out in the woods. Some things that I have used with success, this is just a hickory nut. And the hickory nuts are good because they've got a very thick skin. So I could put that into my drill, hold that in the palm of my hand, and there you go, you've got a handhold. I could use, if I was at the beach or somewhere where there were shells, I could use a shell. Same thing, put this in the palm of my hand, that will turn in the shell. This is a bone. I have an awl on my knife. And what I can do with this awl, and I think it's a real important part of a knife, is to put the awl in here and bore out a notch in a bone. And then I would carry this. I might put a hole in it and carry it on my neck. You can do the same thing with an antler. If you find an antler with a Y, this is kind of a big one. I tend to prefer small ones, but that's what I had in the house. And I could go here and I could start to bore a hole out and work that hole out until it was big enough to receive the tip of this spindle. Now what about rocks? Well, you can use rocks. I don't tend to put rocks out myself because I find that they tear up the top end of my spindle and wear it down too fast, and I don't want that to happen when I'm right at the critical stage of getting that coal. So I tend not to use rocks. I would rather use a piece of wood. But do understand that if you use wood, you need this point very, very pointed, because it's going to wear away the wood handhold as fast as it's wearing away the wood down in your fireboard. So you want to make sure that you are going to get dust from the top, and you could get burned with that dust. It's going to be very hot. So be careful if you're using wood, but I have successfully started a fire with wood as my handhold, just a little bit harder to do. Some things that you can do to carry with you. The handhold that I prefer, and we've done a video on this, is the one that's in my knife. This is just I think it was a teaspoon or a half teaspoon that we put into the knife, and you know, a measuring spoon kind of thing. We put it into the knife with some glue, and you can see that on a video where we made this. There's some other videos that have been put out that do a really great job on explaining how to make some of these handholds as well. I have a small antler that I carry with me sometimes, and I wear that around my neck on my emergency neck kit. So how about a canteen lid? If you've got a canteen lid with you, an army canteen, you could use that lid, but you'd want to round this point off just a little bit at that point. Still pointed, but a little rounder, so that you didn't bore through the plastic in the canteen lid. A metal cup, a shot glass, but if you use a glass, make sure you wrap it. A bottle cap that you find out in the bush, you can use a bottle cap, and I've used that with success as well, or just an old metal can that I have bent and folded with the point on it that I could hold in my hand. So all these things will work as a handhold, but it's real important that you get one that has as little friction as possible so that you can spin that drill pretty fast. Now the last thing you need before you actually spin your fire is some kind of tinder. Here we have a lot of cedar, and we use cedar. We just take some strips of it off of a tree, and you don't take all of them off the same place so you don't tear the tree up. And we just roll it between our hands, and it makes a very fibrous tinder bundle, and we can use that to put our fire in. You can see the fibers in here. You see those fine fibers, and they'll catch very quickly once you get your coal. You're not going to actually make fire with the Bowdrill. You're going to make a coal, and you blow that into fire. Some other thing you can use leaves, you can use dried grasses, you can use some different mosses and some fungus actually that will extend your coal, but they won't light up. So those things will help out a lot. So we get our tinder bundle made, and this is just a small one for demonstration purposes. I would generally make this a lot bigger if I was actually going to blow this into a fire, but you saw that at the beginning. You take your handhold, get it all ready, and thread your string through your drill. Okay, and again, this is not so tight that it can't move. A lot of people have told me that they eat through their string really fast. My guess is that the reason you eat through your string really fast is because your string is too tight. Other people have a problem where their string's too loose. Let me show you a little trick, because inevitably this string will tend to loosen up. If you put your finger on this side of the string and your thumb next to your finger, you can push this string, thus tightening up the drill. Now don't do that as you're first drilling, but when it gets to that critical point and you need to make 4 or 5 more passes, that's a good tip to remember. The other thing you're going to want is some sort of a base. You don't want to spin your coal right onto the damp ground. So I just use a small piece of bark and put it underneath of there, and that'll hold just fine in place. Now, you take and thread. I tend to put mine next to my foot to hold it in place, and that will keep it so I can put my handhold on. Then I can pick my handhold and my spindle up and put it in the right place. Now you'll notice that my arm is wrapped around my leg and my wrist is locked tight to my shin. That's very important for control. What I do is just to start to spin slowly. Now you can see there's already smoke there. You don't have to spin very hard or very fast to get some coal, okay? But what will happen is typically 2 or 3 different things. I'm going to spin and do it like a lot of people normally would, because I want to show you something with the coal dust here. This coal dust will not light, I don't think, because I've just got very, very little pressure on here, but I want to show you something about the dust. You see that this dust is pretty light brown. That tells you that I'm not spinning hard enough, that I'm not putting enough downward pressure on it. If your coal is black and striated, kind of like falling apart, then you're spinning too hard and you actually have too much pressure. You want to back up a little bit. But let me show you a technique that I've learned, or that I have fashioned, that works really, really well, and that's what I call the alternating pressure technique. I simply put my drill in, and I begin off with 4 or 5 strokes just to get that mated again. Now I'm going to put a little more pressure, a little more speed, a little more pressure, a little more speed. Now I've got a pretty good coal under there. Whoops, we fell out. Alright, you can see I've already got a coal. But what I would typically do is to back up and spin very quickly. I'd back my pressure up about 1/3, spin very quickly 5 or 6 times. This will take it past the 750-degree point that you need for heat. Another thing people do once they get a coal, they worry that they've got to go really fast. This coal will burn for quite a while, especially if I had done it longer. Okay, you simply knock your coal off into your tinder bundle and relax for a few minutes. You know, this takes something out of you. It causes your breath to leave, especially if you haven't done it very often. This is the black striated coal that I was talking about, and that's from excess pressure. You can see that didn't go down the notch, that went out around, but I'm going to put that up there because you know what, that'll burn. So I'll put that up there too. And you can see now it's been 20-25 seconds. I'm not in any big rush here. In fact, I can just basically hold this up, let the wind do the job for me today, and that's going to go ahead and begin to burn into that tinder bundle. A couple little breaths there, wrapping it tightly around. And again, this tinder bundle is pretty small. I wouldn't recommend doing it with such a small bundle. You'll probably burn your hands. But there you go. It doesn't take very much, guys, to get this going. So, I've shown you a lot of techniques today. Let me go over a couple of things that are problems. Number one, people say that their bow or their spindle binds up into their fireboard. One of the problems for that is that your handhold isn't working properly, and it may be binding up here and not down here. So you want to make sure that your handhold is well lubricated. One of the ways you can lubricate this is to rub it alongside of your nose. There's some oils there, and that'll help lubricate that, but never get it wet. You don't want it to be sweaty or put water on it, because that will cause the wood to bind up and grab even harder. Another thing is, if your spindle is not evenly carved at the base down here, okay, you can see that this is very round, but I've seen spindles where they're not very round, and where I'm going to go ahead and destroy a spindle for you to show you this. It may look something like that. That's not going to, now that's exaggerated, but you get the point. That's not going to work very well because it's off center. Or if you've got a crooked spindle where the spindle's running crooked, then it's also not going to work very well. Could I start a fire with that? I don't know, maybe. But I'd rather have everything perfect when I'm trying this technique. Okay? The other thing is, you can notice that the cutout here, my spindle fits in very well. Okay? And if this was chipped out, as I said before, my spindle would tend to pop out of there really easily. So you want to be careful with that, and you don't want that. This is actually bordering on being too thick. Let me go ahead and show you what I mean here. I see some people carve notches out like this. Well, that notch isn't going to work very well. Every time that I go here, that spindle's going to tend to pop out until it literally breaks these little divots, these little points off of here. So you want to make sure that you work everything the way it ought to be worked. Well, that's about it for fire with friction by the Bowdrill method. I hope that this helped you a little bit. Feel free again, if you have other questions, to go ahead and write us, to go ahead and ask us personally. We'd be more than happy to help you out. Some people do things like twisting their cordage. I don't think that that's necessary. I've seen other people that actually braid their cordage to give it more bite. You can do that, but again, to me it's not necessary. Just remember to keep your string pretty loose. When you wind your spindle in there, then you can use that thumb pressure, that finger pressure, to tighten it up at that critical moment and make a handhold that's going to be a pretty good handhold that you can use over and over and over again. A lot of people carry magnesium matches, whatever, with them. That's good. A fire by friction is a hard thing, and even in the best times, sometimes you can't get it done. But if you want to have more success, have something that you're used to using all the time with you, whether it's a small antler that you've burned a hole into and they'll last a long, long time, or again, a handhold on a knife, or even just a bottle cap that you carry with you, or a shot glass. Again, if you use a shot glass, wrap that with tape, because if that glass breaks, you don't want to cut your hand pretty bad, and you could get a bad cut on your palm if that broke while you were in the middle of the bow drill. Well, this is David Wonder with Bushcraft on Fire. Hope that this has been a help for you, that it's answered some of the questions that you guys have had, and feel free to continue to tune in with us, to join us on other videos. Until we see you again, have a great day.